What's up, everybody? My name is Jason, and welcome to the $10,000 EIDL grant targeted requirements. This is a very important video, so please give me a thumbs up, hashtag EIDL with your comments below, share this video all over social media. And if you'd like me to help grow your business with a brand new venture that we're about to launch in January of this year, I'm asking you to subscribe and hit the bell. All right, ladies and gentlemen, this has been an absolute fiasco of a morning for me. I've been trying to do this video at least half a dozen times, but when someone calls in on my iPhone, it shuts off because I can't get rid of the mofos and I have to start all over again. It's driving me nuts. So I'm not running on any sleep, ladies and gentlemen. I've been up all night talking to a half a dozen of my friends. I watched a great live stream from Speak and See. I saw my brother from another Rod Squad. I saw Meet Kevin. Have you heard what he's been saying? It's not 20 billion. According to him, it's 40 billion. More on that in a second. So look, I'm running on fumes. I may be all over the place. This is going to be at least a 15 to 20 minute video. I know I said this the other day. This is important shit. If you're sitting there wondering, okay, the bill passed, fantastic. There's at least 20 to 40 billion dollars of EIDL grant money. When am I going to get it, Jason? Do I have to reapply? I will answer that today. What about this low-income area requirements? Is that going to screw 68% of the folks in this country like myself who don't live in a low-income area? I'm going to answer that too. But I want to start off by saying to all the lawyers and the accountants out there, we need your help. I will do my best to keep the F-bombs to a minimum. I need everyone sharing this. This is not just to inform the small business community of what this bill says, and I'm about to go through it section by section. This is about attracting the Travis Sickles, the Max Mahers, Andrew Cartwrights, JJ the CPA, anyone who can understand this damn legalese that we're all trying to decipher. Because if you're like me, in the last 15 hours, you've read the Wall Street Journal, Forbes, Newsday. Everyone's got a different opinion. It boils down to 3 buckets before I get into this and answer your questions. Cheers. Bucket number 1 believes that if you don't live in a low-income area, you're screwed. You're not getting $10,000 according to about a third of the folks that are out there, both on YouTube and in the mainstream media. The second bucket, of which I am in, and I will articulate my points and reasons why over the next 20 minutes. So if you got to come back to this, it's very important that you do so before the end of the day. The second bucket believes, okay, if you don't live in a low-income area, if you have 300 employees or less, and you can show an economic loss of 30% or more, and this is very important, if you already applied for a loan or a grant, and there's a subsection in here that most people are missing, shout out to the 2 people on our channel who pointed this out to me. I love you. Thank you. I love you. I love you. Folks, I haven't slept at all, not a damn minute. So bear with me. There's a section in here that says if you applied for a loan and or a grant, you're entitled to the $10,000. So if that's not a thumbs up and a hashtag EIDL with something, shout out to the Atlanta soccer team. And by the way, in case you didn't hear me the other day, how about them Cowboys? We're 1 game out of first. We beat the Eagles. Washington falls apart the last 2 games. We're going to go to the playoffs. Can you believe that? Unbelievable. All right, ladies and gentlemen. And the third bucket, which to me is a little unbelievable, is the Meet Kevin bucket. If you watch Meet Kevin, I have a lot of respect for that guy. He's a hustler, and he puts out a tremendous amount of good information. Occasionally, though, a little wrong on his facts, and he has to go back and change them. But last night, he did a couple of videos. You may have seen them, where he says you not only get $20 billion if you live in a low-income area, but there's another $20 billion. And Kevin, I'm challenging you, show us in these 5,000 plus pages, where's the language? You said you were going to show us where it is in the bill. Where is it? According to Meet Kevin, there's another $20 billion for the 1,000 per employee. And he did a video where he said, you don't need to be an S-Corp or an LLC. You just be a side hustle. You could be baking cookies or mowing lawns. And according to Meet Kevin, you're going to get 1,000 per employee. So if he's right, ladies and gentlemen, and he might be, at a minimum, you got another round of 1,000 per employee coming. But this bucket number 2 guy is about to walk through this damn thing, and it's going to be painful for some of you, is going to articulate why I strongly believe that virtually everyone watching, perhaps with the exception of agriculture, and I will read it in a moment, stands to get the balance of $10,000 that you were promised in the CARES Act. Is that a thumbs up? That's got to be a thumbs up. That's got to be a we love you, something in the comments. My goodness, the damn thing's passed. The money's coming. Can you believe it? Holy shit. All right, we're on page 2,184 of over 5,000. And I'm going to read this. And it's going to sound like, oh my God, what the hell's he saying? But in my own way, I'm going to translate it for you, so a third grader can understand what the hell I'm talking about. Before I go through this, allow me to simply define what is low income area. And I know there's a subsection in here and it's 80% of median income. I know that. And you got something called your census tract that you can find on the internet. I'm in a very high-end area just north of Atlanta, so according to the census tract, I'm screwed. But I'm not, because I'm going to read a section that everyone who's in the queue has got a chance at not up to, but $10,000 in black and white. But low income is 32% of the American people. They make $39,000, $39,500 or less. So you mean to tell me, ladies and gentlemen, that according to this, and I'm keeping it simple, I'm not referring to the subsection, as some of you keep pointing out in the comments, that the SBA, because it works out to the same numbers, by the way, they're just going to say, to 68% of small business owners who live in New York, Miami, Atlanta, Chicago, your business has been absolutely demolished. It might be down 70 or 80% in terms of economic loss, but because you live in Manhattan, you're not getting access to this $10,000. My effing ass. If that is true, holy hell's about to be raised. But as you'll see in the next 20 minutes, I don't think that's the case. So without further ado, we now know what low income means. Let's dive into the bill and I will translate. And by the way, I'm not as fancy as Rod Squad and all those other folks, Speak and See and Max Maher and others that I've seen share their screen. I do all my videos never edited on my iPhone. Someday I'll get a fancy camera. My channel will probably won't take off because I blocked too many of you. But maybe I'll go to 1 million subs and beyond when I get myself a fancy setup. Until then, bear with me as I read this to you. Page 2,184, it's marked section 261. Targeted EIDL advance for small business, continuity, adaptation, and resiliency. Section 1, agricultural enterprise. The term agricultural enterprise has the meaning given in the term 18B of the Small Business Act, blah, blah, blah. The term covered entity, which is you and me. The term covered entity, which I'll refer to numerous times, means that an eligible entity that I, or A, applies for a loan under Section 7B of the Small Business Act 15C 632B2 during the covered period, which is between March and right now, including before the date of the enactment of this act. Most of you that think we're up shit's creek without a paddle missed this section. Thank you to the 1 or 2 folks who pointed this out to me at about 5 o'clock in the morning. What I just read to you, you're a covered entity, i.e. you have a chance to get the $10,000 grant if you've applied for a loan already. Do you understand what I just read there? So yeah, you can be in a low income area and be qualified for the $10,000 grant or the balance thereof. But you can also be a covered entity that qualifies if you already got a damn loan. So in other words, ladies and gentlemen, to the 3.7 million of you who got a loan from the SBA, which includes guys like me, or the ones that applied and got rejected for poor credit, more on that in a second, which is almost 9 million. That to me, and I look forward to any lawyer or accountant or someone who's smarter than I am, and there's got to be 1 or 2 of you out there, tell me how that doesn't say that if you applied for a loan and or a grant, you're a covered entity that's eligible for $10,000. We move on. Section 2 or II is located in a low-income community. So in other words, Section I or A was if you already got a loan. That's when you're eligible. Section I2 or B is if you live in a low-income community. Section III, you've suffered an economic loss of greater than 30%. And Section 4, you employ not more than 300 people. And to me, and no disrespect to the farmers, I grew up in rural upstate New York. It also says, except with respect to an entity including under Section 123 of Title 13 or any successor regulation does not include an agricultural enterprise. So I could be wrong. But to me, this says that if you're a farmer, you may not be eligible for this $10,000 EIDL grant. So once again, before I go any further, covered entities, you and me, during the covered period, March, when the lockdowns began, and now, those four things, you already got a loan, you live in low income, you got 300 employees or less, and you can show a 30% economic loss, that qualifies for 10 grand. That's what I read, because nowhere in this bill, and somebody show me if it's there, does it say you must have all four. Some media outlets are claiming that. Show me where it says you must have all four. It says covered entities that are eligible, and you, if you already applied for a loan, got one, or got rejected because you got shitty credit, you're still entitled to the $10,000 we move along. What is a covered period? Section 3. The term covered period has the meaning given in the term Section 110 of the CARES Act. That section keeps coming up. More on that again in a second. As amended by Section 332. All right, Section 4, economic loss. The term economic losses, and this is very important. Again, if you got to give this a thumbs up and come back to it later when you put the kids to bed, this is very important. I don't know how long. It's probably going to be 20 to 25 minutes. It's going to be well worth it. A covered period has the meaning given to the Section 110 as amended, blah, blah, blah. Economic loss. What does it mean? A, the amount by which gross receipts of the covered entity, that's you, declined during an 8-week period between March 2nd and right now, the passing of this new law, relative to a comparable 8-week of the previous year, including prior to March 2nd. All right, let me simplify what I just said to you. You can choose any time period in 2019, or if it's me, as I've done with reconsideration for many, many people, you can take January or February of this year. That's when you were doing really well, right? We were all off to a fast start, 3.5% unemployment. And then after March, when the lockdowns began, pick any 8-week period. It can be March and April, it can be June and July, where you show a 30% or more drop relative to January and February. Very simple. We were making 10 grand a month in January and February. We got locked down and it dropped by 30%, 70%, 80%, whatever it is. As a covered entity in the covered time period, you were eligible to get $10,000. And by the way, is it up to? I'm about to answer that for you. You might want to stick around. All right. The amount, blah, blah, blah. Section B of the same section. If the covered entity is a seasonal business concern, such as the amount determined appropriate by the administrator. In other words, if your business is seasonal, you may have more flexibility, but that's according to Ms. Javita Carranza, which is the administrator. All right. All right, this is very important. Section 5. We're now on page 2185. Eligible entity. The term eligible entity, which is hopefully every single one of you, means an entity that during the cover period is eligible for a loan. Notice what I just said. An eligible entity is someone during the covered period, 2020 after March, is eligible for a loan made under Section 7B2 of the Small Business Act, blah, 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 Section 1110. There it is again. All right, so in other words, again, if you were eligible and or you applied for a loan and or a grant, in my opinion, you're eligible to get $10,000 as per this bill. What is a low-income community? The term low-income community has the meaning given in term Section 45D, which many of you have referenced, of the IRS Code of 1986. And that's the whole census tract. It's got to be 80% above or below the median income. I don't want to put all that out there because it's just going to confuse the hell out of everybody. The simple terms is 32% of our people live in a low-income area. So don't tell me they're going to exclude, on average, 68% of small business owners who've been stuck in the damn queue waiting in the midst of this lockdown for the balance of the 10 grand they were promised in the CARES Act. I often wonder what my neighbor, she's got a tiny little baby, gorgeous, about 9 months old. And the walls are not that thick. So she has to be thinking, what the is this guy doing? All right, I continue. In general, subject to paragraph 2, a covered entity, after submitting a request to the administrator. We may, ladies and gentlemen, have to submit a request. However, in a couple of sections down, it says that the SBA is supposed to alert those that have already applied for a loan and or a grant. So if you're new and you haven't applied, or they can't find your damn application, right? They can't find millions of applications, but we're going to trust them to do the census tract right. My ass. You may have to send information or apply. I will know within a week or so. There'll be an application up. It's not up despite what anyone else is telling you. The only application on SBA.gov is the loan, not the grant. As soon as it's up there, I will let you know if you have not already applied. As far as I'm concerned, if you're in the queue, which is most of you, don't do a damn thing. Don't do a damn thing. Just sit and wait. I know it's hard to wait. The applicable loan for which the covered entity applies or applied under blah, 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 the covered entity accepts. This is important. The covered entity accepts or accepted the offer of the administrator with respect to an approved loan. In other words, you're eligible as a covered entity, whether you accepted, in this case, if you accepted the loan. So if you accepted the loan that was offered by the administrator, aka SBA, you're eligible. Section C, the covered entity has previously received a loan under Section A, so you applied. And in the next sessions, so you're eligible. If you got the loan, you're eligible. Here's section 2, effect of previously received amounts. This is the balance thereof. Very important. Thank you for sticking with me. I know this is tough. In general, A, with respect to a covered entity that received an emergency grant under section 110 of the CARES Act before the date of enactment of this act, which is right now, the amount of the payment that the covered entity, you, shall receive under the subsection after satisfaction of the procedures required. In other words, you're low income, you already got a loan, or at least you applied, you've got 300 employees or less, and you can show a 30% or more economic loss. I'm about to announce the biggest moment of the video. It requires a drink of coffee. Wow, we're at 17 minutes. It's going to be worth it, folks. Stick with me till the end, even if it's close to a half an hour. Are you ready? Under paragraph B, shall be, quote, the difference between $10,000 and the amount that previously received grant. In other words, if you got $1,000 per employee, I just read out loud, shall be the difference between $10,000 and the amount that previously received grant. I challenge anyone watching to prove to me where it didn't just say $10,000 or the balance thereof. There's no up to, there's no maybe. It says shall be the difference between 10 grand and the amount that previously received grant. Can we get a clap for that? A hallelujah, a cheer? Excuse me. Sorry, Mom. She hated it when I belched. I used to belch like crazy because I drank like a fish, but she hated that. So she's barking up there. She died in 2015 of a stroke. I was very close. Mama's boy. We move on. Procedures. This is very important. When are you getting paid? I'm about to tell you. If the administrator receives a request under paragraph 1, in other words, if they lost your application or you're brand new and they don't end up sending out an email to about 9 million people that are already in the queue, and I'm about to answer that in a second, it says, if the administrator receives a request under paragraph 1 from the covered entity, again, that's you, described in subparagraph blah, 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 the administrator shall, not later than 21 days after the date on which the administrator receives the request, perform the verification required. If the administrator under subsection verifies that the entity is covered, in other words, you qualify, provide the covered entity with a payment in the amount described above. In other words, They got to pay us within 21 days. So ladies and gentlemen, let's say Trump signs the bill that's already passed the House and the Senate today. It generally takes about 10 days for them to get their shit together. So as I said, somewhere between the 5th of January and towards the end of next month, by law, they have to pay you 10 grand or the balance thereof within 21 days. So if it's me, I'm thinking worst case, by February 1st, I got my money. Hopefully it's sooner than that. We move on. I mean, if you guys aren't thumbs upping me and just having a good old time in the comments, what else do I have to read for you? I got some more. All right. Rule of construction. Nothing in this paragraph may be construed to require any entity that received an emergency grant under subsection 1110 before the date of this reenactment to repay any amount of the grant. In other words, you don't have to pay it back. This is free money. I just told you out loud, you don't have to pay the money back. And by the way, before I forget, this bill overall is fantastic. Many of you were concerned that if you got PPP, you had to pay back your EIDL. Not any longer. So if you got a $100,000 PPP and a $10,000 EIDL, or you're about to, you don't have to pay it back. You get the full $100,000. There's write-offs. You can write off meals for 2 years. There's deferral of payments, ladies and gentlemen, not just a year in this bill. The SBA has what they call discretion to extend payments out between 3 and 5 years. So in other words, if you can prove that you're really sucking wind as a result of this lockdown, according to this bill, which goes way beyond EIDL, you can convince the SBA to give you between 3 and 5 years, at a minimum, an extra year, so a total of 2, before you have to start making payments. There are so many things in this bill that are absolutely phenomenal outside of EIDL, but we continue. Verification. In carrying out this section, the administrator shall require any information, including tax records. Are you listening? Tax records from an entity submitting a request under subsection determines to be necessary to verify that the entity is covered. That's you being qualified, without regard to whether the entity has previously submitted such information to the administrator. Now, this is very important. I'm going to get tons of questions on this because people will not have watched this entire video. That to me just said, even if you're a covered entity and you already got a loan and or you're applied, which makes you eligible for the $10,000, if the SBA smells a rat, if you're in an industry where there's a lot of fraud, they have the right to say, you know what? We need to see your tax returns. We need to see your bank statements. We need to see incorporation papers or Schedule Cs. That's not unusual. If you're full of shit and you're a fraud, you're going to have a problem. But if you got the documentation, even if you're an Uber or a Lyft driver, if you can show receipts or deposits or tips, and you got a business bank account, hopefully at a recognizable bank, but it's not an absolute requirement, and you got your 2019 taxes done, if you haven't, do so now, you're going to be fine. Order of processing. Very important section here. The administrator shall process, approve for requests for payments under subsection B in the order that the administrator receives requests, except, listen to me here, except that the administrator shall give, this is big, 1, first priority to covered entities described in subsection B2A. In other words, if you already applied and you're in the queue, you have priority status. It goes on to say second priority to covered entities that have not received emergency grants. So if you have not applied and you have not received the bullshit $1,000 per employee, you come after the 9 million folks and almost 46,000 on this channel who have been waiting for up to 10 months. There's another thumbs up. I mean, the good news just keeps on rolling, folks. In addition to any other restrictions imposed under this section, eligible, blah, 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 notification required. The administrator shall... Here comes the alert from the SBA if you're already in the queue. Notification required. The administrator, which is the SBA, shall provide notice to each of the following entities stating that the entity may be eligible for payment under this section if the entity satisfies the requirements under clauses. In other words, if you're qualified. Low income, you already applied or got a loan, 300 or less employees, and a 30% or more economic loss in 8 weeks of this year relative to last. Each entity that receives an emergency grant under Section 110 before the date of the enactment of this act. In other words, if you already got a grant and or a loan, I just read out loud that the SBA is required to send you an email, as I anticipated, to say, we've got great news. We gave you $1,000 per employee, which is a violation of the law back in April or May. And under the new bill that just passed, we can give you the balance of $10,000. In other words, you don't need to reapply as of right now. You don't need to reapply as of right now if you're already in the queue. Now, that may change. If it does, I'll let you know. So if you're already in the queue, you already applied, they're supposed to send you an email to say, I've got great news. You got $10,000 of the balance thereof coming. All right, let me skip, and we're almost done. Don't go anywhere. Administration, Section G. In carrying out this section, the administrator may rely on loan officers and other persons of the Office of Disaster Assistance of the administration, including contractors of the administration. In other words, they've outsourced a lot of this to the folks at Rocket Mortgage. Most of the loan officers and paralegals that are working on your reconsideration or your loan, they're mid to late 20s, some are into their 30s. If I had to guess, 30 to 35, working from home, men and women. And it's luck of the draw. A lot of you guys that have won in reconsideration, you've got just someone who's highly incentivized to make money in commissions, and they're willing to bend the rules. And then you've got the pricks, the hard ass, that'll make you send in all the documentations humanly possible, and you still don't get the reconsideration. So, moral of the story, they've got a right to outsource this business. It's gotten better. Authorization and appropriations. They're authorized to appropriate the administrator of $20 billion. Meet Kevin. Where's the other $20 billion? Where's the other $1,000 per employee? I want to see it. We love you, but we want to see it. The $20 billion to carry out this section, which shall remain available to December 31st of 2021. In other words, they may run out of this first tranche of $20 billion, but this program shall remain active until December the 31st. Folks, the HEROES Act, recall 2.2, had a provision that when they got down to 25% of the funds left, the SBA had to alert Congress for more money. The fact that they're willing to do this grant program for a whole year, they're not going to run out of money. So in January and February, when we get round two, and Mitch McConnell and Chuck Schumer both last night and this morning said there's another deal coming. If I had to guess, somewhere around $500 or $600 billion of targeted relief, PPP, EIDL, etc., revenue to the state, and the liability protections. It's coming. They're not going to run out of money, in my humble opinion. All right, we're almost done. Don't go anywhere because there's one or two other things. This is called emergency EIDL grants. Oh, you got shitty credit? You got shitty credit? I got good news for you. All right, emergency EID. Have you given me a thumbs up? I know I've said, come on now. What do I have to do? Emergency EIDL grants. Section 110 of the CARES Act, we've talked about that relentlessly, is amended, I-1, in subsection A-1 by striking December 31, 2020, which is the deadline, full year of this EIDL grant program, and inserting December 31, 2021. Section I, approve an applicant based solely on the credit score of the applicant or by using alternative appropriate methods to determine an applicant's ability to repay and use information from the Department of Treasury and applicable is eligible to receive such a loan, or the information contained, I know this is tough, the information contained is an appropriation for such loan is accurate, and in subsection A of 1 by striking during the covered period and inserting advances during the covered period in subsection as no designated by striking within 3 days. In other words, it's not going to be 3 days to get your money. It's going to be up to 21 days. Where the hell is it? Where is it about the credit? I'm tired, ladies and gentlemen, but I guarantee there's a section in here that says if you've got bad credit, you cannot be denied for this loan. And that's what S4227 also says. So don't lose faith. If you got below 570, which is required to do a loan, it does say in here, because I'm a bit delirious. Hopefully I'll find it. It says that you cannot be denied at a crack at your $10,000. If someone can tell me what page it's on in the comments, I'd appreciate it. Timing. With respect to each of the following requests submitted, the administrator shall verify that the entity is covered. You're eligible. That's more of the same bullshit. In other words, you got to prove your identity. With respect to administrator determines that to receive an advance under the subset, you must provide the entity with a notification explaining why the administrator reached the determination. In other words, if they say for whatever reason you're not a covered entity, you don't live in low-income housing, you didn't already apply for a loan, which is very, very important. Remember in the early part of this video, I read that to be, you can live in low-income housing, or if you've already applied, you're in the queue, you still get a crack at your $10,000. This says that if they deny you, and we will raise holy hell and we'll figure out how to do that, they have to send you an explanation as to why. I'm assuming that's going to be able to be reconsidered as well. All right, we're almost done. Repeal of EIDL advance reduction. Sense of Congress. Not really necessary. Effective date. Now it's getting into, all right, we're out of that. It's into flexibility and deferral of payments. Again, that would be page 2195. It talks about how you can get at least a year. So your payments on the EIDL are supposed to be within 1 year. This new bill extends it out a year if you want it. And it also says that the SBA has discretion to go even further, somewhere between 3 and 5 years, which again, when you add it all up, you get to keep all of your PPP. You don't have to pay back the EIDL. This is a phenomenal bill. So ladies and gentlemen, we're at 32 minutes. Holy shit. I will continue to pour over this. I will do whatever it takes. And if for some reason the SBA attempts to screw any one of you, I have a promise, and I've said this before, 3 things. You're getting $10,000 of the balance thereof. I want the loan caps removed at 150, put back at $2 million, and I will not rest. I will not rest. I will fight to the death to get the loan forgiven. Meaning, according to Big Ben Cardin and other supporters like myself, you don't pay back the SBA an effing dime. So until next time, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to try to get some rest. I love and appreciate each and every single one of you, and thanks so much for watching.